Hi everybody, my name is B-Boy Mandis, and today I'm here to tell you what kind of decks you can make in the Horizon format. So Horizon is a very new format, so you may not be familiar with what it is. So basically Horizon is Frontier with only commons and uncommons. So before you judge, let me tell you this format is super fun and it's super budget. The decks, they only cost about $20 or $30 to build. And likely, if you bought packs in the last couple of years, you probably have the cards laying around to build some decks. And not just that, there's so many fun decks that you can make, and that's something that I'm going to talk about in this video. Before we get into that, I want to talk about some staple cards that kind of define the format a bit. First are the sweepers of the format. The two primary sweepers so far have been Flaying Tendrils and Fiery Cannonade. And what you can see from these is that they deal with 2 toughness creatures, but something bigger it's not going to hit. So this is something that you want to keep in mind when you're building decks for Horizon. If you're going to be running these sweepers, you got to think about how are you going to deal with the bigger creatures. And also, if you're running an aggro deck, you got to figure out how you're not going to get blown out by these cards. Another thing to go over is the removal in the format. Of course, black is going to have the best removal, and the first card I want to talk about is Fatal Push. So this is probably the most expensive card in this format, but really it's only okay in the format, and you don't need to have Fatal Pushes if you don't want. So this is good because it costs 1 mana, and it can deal with the smaller early creatures, but it's not that easy to trigger Revolt in this format, so it's often not that great. I mean, it's good for like super aggro decks, but if you're trying to hit the 4 CMC creatures, it's not going to really help you that much. The better options for those are Grasp of Darkness and Ultimate Price. So Grasp of Darkness, this is going to kill most of the things in the format, and same with Ultimate Price. There are some multicolored creatures in the format that it doesn't hit. 2 of the big ones are Enigma Drake and Reflector Mage. And also artifact creatures too, so that's something to keep in mind. You don't want to only depend on Ultimate Price. Grasp of Darkness is good, a good option that you can have. Red also has a lot of good removal, as you would guess, and really the card that's been one of the best removal spells in the format is Abrade. So Abrade, it does 3 damage to any creature, so it'll kill things that the sweepers don't. And also, the other mode of destroying an artifact is relevant more often than you might think. So there are some good decks in the format that run artifacts. So for example, there are Oketra's Monument decks, and also there are Ensoul artifact decks. So chances are there are going to be artifacts that you want to have an answer to, and this one, even if they're not running artifacts, there are gonna be other relevant targets that you can hit. Beyond Abrade, there are other removable spells that you'll see a lot of. Lightning Strike is one of them, because it can go to the dome or it can kill creatures, and also Wild Slash for 1 mana. So really this is just a strictly better Shock, so Shock is in the format as well, but if you don't need that many Shock effects, Wild Slash is going to be better. Typically the Ferocious ability is not relevant, but it's strictly better than Shock. If you need more of a catch-all removal, then white is the color that you want to be playing. 2 of the best catch-all removal spells in the format are Cast Out and Ixalan's Binding. So Cast Out can be played at instant speed, and Ixalan's Binding is great because that other part of the other text on the card is relevant more often than you might think. So your opponent may draw multiples of a card, and if you play Ixalan's Binding on the first one, they can't play the other ones. Another important staple to talk about are the lands in the format. There is a lot of fixing in this format, and that will be helpful to you. We have the gain lands from Khans of Tarkir. So there's all 10 of them in here, so you can play any color combinations you want, and these gain lands will help you a lot. And the 1 life that you gain is relevant more often than you might think. If you want to play 3 colors, we also have the Tri lands from Khans of Tarkir. So one thing to note is that these are for the Khans of Tarkir wedges. So when building a 3-color deck, you're probably better off going with a wedge over a shard because you have good mana for it. But not just that, we also have Unclaimed Territory in the format and also Evolving Wilds. So Unclaimed Territory is great if you want to play a tribal deck, and it doesn't come into play tapped, so that's another big bonus of it. And there's also Evolving Wilds, which, you know, is a staple in other formats also, and it'll get you any color that you want. So what kind of decks can you make in this format? And really the answer is there's a ton of different decks that you can make. First, there are tribal decks. If you're a fan of tribal, then Horizon is good for you. So one deck that's been quite good is Black-White Zombies. And the reason for that is we have Lord of the Accursed. So this is one of the very few lords that we have that are legal in this format. So typically lords are rare. So this one is uncommon and you can use it, and it's a great lord. So not only does it pump your team, but he's also 2/3. So what that means is that he doesn't die to the sweepers in the format. Going along with Lord of the Accursed, we have other zombie bonus cards. So Binding Mummy is really good, and especially good in multiples. So you can basically tap down all your opponent's creatures and just keep swinging for the win. And we also have Wayward Servant, which this guy, he can help you race a lot. And if you have him in multiples, you would drain more life than you might think. So he's actually quite good. And not just that, but we have other good zombies as well. So there's Unraveling Mummy and Accursed Horde, which if you're on the offensive, these guys are going to help you a lot. You can also play elves in Horizon also. So they're ubiquitous. You see them in every format. They're also in Horizon. So every elf deck starts out with some mana dorks. So we have Elvish Mystic and Servant of the Conduit. And we also have some pretty good elves that have made an impact in other formats as well. So we have Shaman of the Pack, which if you have a lot of elves on the board, he's going to drain quite a bit of life. And also Dwynen's Elite, which is great for spamming the board with elves. And elves are pretty small, so you're going to need ways to get an advantage. So Dustwatch Recruiter is great for digging up more elves. And also we have Overcome, which can be your big finisher when you need your Alpha Strike. There are control decks also in the format. Probably the best one so far has been Blue-Red Control. And of course control decks, they start with counter spells. And we have some that they're better than they look. So Countervailing Winds. It may look like a soft counter, but it doesn't take long to stack up cards in your graveyard, and this thing becomes a hard counter quicker than you might think. And not just that, you can cycle it if you don't need it. We also have Supreme Will, which can be a mana leak, or it can help you filter through your deck to find whatever you need. Another thing about going red-blue is you have this energy combo, which is quite potent. So there's Harness Lightning, which on its own already does 3 damage to a creature. But if you play a couple Glimmer of Geniuses, you're gonna accumulate some energy, and you can take out even bigger creatures with Harness Lightning. But not just that, Red-Blue has some really good finishers. Enigma Drake, this guy will get big faster than you think. And late game, if you play a Rise from the Tides, you might be getting 10 zombie tokens. You could get quite a bit. And Cryptic Serpent, this guy will cost you 2 mana quicker than you might think, and he's bigger than most of the things in the format. You could also play mono black control if you like control. Like I mentioned before, black has some of the best removal in the format. You also have Sweeper in playing Tendrils. And not just that, but you also have Disruption too. So Lay Bare the Heart is great for picking out the cards from your opponent's hand that are gonna give you trouble. And you also have one of the best 2-drops in the format, which is Gifted Aetherborn. This guy, he plays defense really well. He can help you race. That will keep you alive for a long time. And also, the icing on the cake can be this card here, Torment of Scarabs. So if this thing is left on the board for many, many turns, it will grind your opponent down. So that will be the goal of mono black control, is to grind your opponent down. There are also combo decks in the format. One of the best so far has been Oketra's Monument. So this deck starts out with Oketra's Monument, which did make a splash in Standard as well. It helps you make tons of tokens, and there's different ways to do it in this deck. So this deck also features creatures that have really nice enter the battlefield effects. So there's Cloud Blazer, who's going to give you some card advantage, and also Reflector Mage, which if you played against him, this guy is super annoying to play against. I mean, he was bad enough that he was actually banned in Standard. But on top of that, we have different bounce effects and also blink effects to recycle our enter the battlefield triggers, and also to get more tokens with Oketra's Monument. And then finally, I mean, I said that this is a combo deck. It's kind of a soft combo here, but you can make it a hard combo deck, and you do that by making the deck Jeskai and you use Impact Tremors. So Impact Tremors, along with 2 Felidar Guardians, lets you go infinite. So you play 1 Felidar Guardian, and then you play another one, and then you target the first Felidar Guardian, and it creates an infinite loop, basically, where you can get infinite triggers with Impact Tremors. There is another infinite combo in the format. There's probably more than that, but this is what we've seen so far. Another one involves Crackdown Construct. So Crackdown Construct, whenever you activate an ability of an artifact or creature that isn't a mana ability, he gets +1/+1. And plus, we have this guy, Kazul's Toll Collector, which for 0 mana, you can attach an equipment to him. So basically what happens is if you have any kind of equipment in play, for example, say something like Bonesaw, which is super cheap, you can equip it infinitely to Kazul's Toll Collector and make your Crackdown Construct a million power toughness if you want. You combine this with something like Fling or whatever you want, then there you go, you got another infinite combo. There are other great decks that you can build. There's Horizon features a lot of mid-range type decks, which I would say Winding Constrictor is one of those. So this obviously starts with Winding Constrictor, which he's going to give more counters to your creatures or counters to yourself, which also includes energy. And you can go multiple directions with Winding Constrictor. One thing you could do is combine him with the Outlast guys. So there's Outlast guys, the ones I show here, can give all your guys with +1/+1 counters. You can give them Lifelink or Flying, but there's also another one that gives First Strike, one in black that gives all your guys Death Touch. So that's one way to go with the Winding Constructor deck, is do it Abzan with +1/+1 counters. Or you can also go the energy route as well and go Sultai. So there's Longtusk Cub and Rogue Refiner, which are making a big impact in Standard as well. And I don't show it in this video, but you can also make Temur Energy in this in Horizon as well. So that's another option. Another nifty deck is Ensoul Artifact, which this starts out with both Tezzeret's Touch and Ensoul Artifact, which transforms one of your artifacts into a 5/5 creature. And there are some great targets for this in the Horizon format. 2 of them being Darksteel Citadel and Ornithopter. So with Darksteel Citadel, you can make a 5/5 indestructible creature as early as turn 2. And same thing with Ornithopter, you can make a 5/5 flying creature as early as turn 2. So if this goes unanswered, you're going to win the game pretty quickly. So from what you've seen, there's tons of great decks that you can make in this format. So if you're interested in playing Horizon, how can you start playing? Well, the easiest thing to do is just tell your friends about it. Like I've said before, if you bought cards in the last couple of years, if you bought in packs, you're likely going to have a lot of these cards you need just laying around. So you just, tell your friends about it, throw together some decks and start playing. The other way that you can start playing is be a part of MTG Amino. For those that are not familiar, MTG Amino is a smartphone app that's available for iPhone and Android. And it's basically a social networking app, kind of like a Facebook for Magic. That's the best way to describe it. And there's a growing following for Horizon on here. So on MTG Amino, you can talk about different Horizon decks, or you could actually be a part of a league that we're running on Magic Online. So it's called Amino Horizon League. And to be a part of it, all you have to do is have Magic Online and join Amino and join the league from there. We play games on Magic Online, and it's super cheap to build these Horizon decks on Magic Online. Most of them will only cost you 2 or 3 ticks, so that's another way that you can start playing Horizon right away. Alright, well that's